Unfortunately, at this point, we can't be in person, but this is the next best thing. So I'm going to show you today, well, what I have planned are 3 designs, and then maybe we'll have some QA after that as well. But if you don't have access to the chat, feel free to just verbalize your question. And you can, Nicole can then relay that to me. So my overall theme for today is using garden and natural materials. Of course, I chose that long before we had the deep freeze.
Yeah.
And so a lot of my garden and the gardens here at A&M have been really decimated. So I did have to procure a few things from the local garden centers, but they would be things that hopefully you could either have on your patio or out in your garden. And so just use your imagination a little bit, I think is my point here. But I want to make things relatively simple so that, you know, a lot of times we don't have a ton of flowers of the same thing. So using 1 or 2 or 3 of this and a couple of this and 1 of that, and you can combine those together in lots of different ways to really get some interesting designs, either for just your own personal pleasure or for if you're going to have a party or some dinner guests over, some centerpiece. So I thought I would start with this, and I think bottle collections are kind of a thing now. So you can get clear and colored and round and triangular, all different kinds of shapes. But what I've done is put them in a tray, and I'll tilt this forward just a little bit so I don't spill too much water. Maybe you can see I've just wedged a little bit of foam in between each of the bottles. Now, that's really just to stabilize the bottles. I'm not going to do much as far as material down here. Actually, I'm just going to put some moss right now, right over the top of the foam, so that we don't have to see the floral foam. And this doesn't have to be floral foam. It could be styrofoam or something that's probably waterproof, because the bottles will maybe spill a little bit, and you don't want to use paper that might get soggy. So I'm just going to put some of my moss on all of my foam. And then just for a little more texture before we start adding any flowers to that, I have a table right off to the side of my work area here. So excuse me if I disappear momentarily. And I'm going to add some rocks. I have a black tray, so I'm just going to add a few of these black pumice rocks. Scatter those along, artistically placing them. That was a chuckle in my voice. Just so I kind of pull that black up, that color. You can see I need a little bit of moss down on the edge here. Just to give it a little more natural look. Now you could use any kind of rock. It doesn't have to be these black pumice. If you had a brown container, well, maybe you would use just, you know, brown stones from your garden, or gravel. Gravel would be nice in this as well, or a combination of those. So we'll just kind of, they make a nice noise too when you put the rocks in. One more. Okay. Enough rocks. Now, the next thing I want to do is we could just put individual flowers or groups of flowers in each one of these, and it would it would be a nice centerpiece. But what I want to do is show you how to make it sort of unified. So in our principles and elements of design, unity is when you take smaller parts and you make it look like something larger. And this is actually a design style called synergistic. So I went out and procured some greenbrier without the thorns. So the tips of it are really what I'm going to be using. I'm going to attach it to the neck of several of these jars, and I'm using what's called bind wire. It's about a number 26 wire with some raffia around it, and I'm just going to twist that on the bottle a couple of times. I already have one on the middle, and let's put one down here. This will help me secure or bind the greenbrier. Make that go around to the front. Now, I'm not really too concerned about it being in water because it'll dry. It might take it a long time to dry, but I think I'm going to wrap it. This is a nice long piece. Let's see, let's start on this end. So I will put it in the water just as an anchor for the end. And then I'm just going to twist my bind wire. And bring it back over to the other side. So one bind is here and the other one's on the side facing me. And then I've got another piece. Let's just kind of do the same thing on the other side. Start there, bind it. Pull it back around, and then it's not quite long enough to get to the middle, so I can just take another little piece of bind wire and connect it together. So it looks like it's one big long vine going from one end to the other. So that helps with that unity. So we have the tray and then the rocks, and then we have the greenbrier. Off my excess. Okay. Now let's start adding some fresh material. I have some nice big English ivy leaves, so I'm just going to put those in. Maybe not every one of them, but oops, forgot to trim that one. And let's see, I have one more in my hand. Let's put that one right there. Okay, so we get a little bit of greenery in there. And I'm going to be using in a couple of the designs this material. This actually came out of our greenhouse. It's a kind of fern that's called petticoat. So it grows from, here's the plant where my hand is, and it grows out, and then on the very end of it, it makes this poof of smaller little fronds. So it makes it, well, the name's pretty appropriate, petticoat. It's like the ruffles around the bottom of the petticoat. So it only takes one or two of these to fill up a small container or a vase. So I'm going to strip all the leaves, making sure nothing goes down into the water. And let's put one of these where I don't have an ivy. Like that. I think I want one more small one. Whoops. to go with that ivy. Okay. Now let's add a few flowers. So we've got this real earthy, vegetative sort of look going. So let's kind of keep that in the theme. I have a snapdragon. Let's put that right here in the center to start with. I have some kalanchoe blossoms. If you've not used kalanchoe blossoms before, you really should, because they last a long time as a cut. And they come in so many nice colors. This is a rich dark red. So let's maybe do one there. Again, I'm taking the leaves off. And let's double that up. So we'll put another one right there. Now I have a purple plectranthus. I love these flowers. It's a nice form variation from what I'm using so far. Got a little bit of foliage with it. I'll have to take most of it off to get down into the water far enough. But let's add one there. Now it's kind of brittle, so be careful not to just yank on the leaves. It might just snap the whole stem off, but it does last pretty well. Okay, so there's my purple. And I have some, these are little daisy mums that really don't go into the season of what we're doing here, but again, use your imagination. These could be Shastas, or these could be Cosmos, or and I'm going to put a couple of those down on this end. And use my petticoat fern to kind of hold those separate so they don't squish down onto each other. And then, oh, my cord's long enough here. Some lily grass. This variegated is very nice. I'm going to use 2 or 3 stems of that in my final vase. Just to give some height and variation of form. Well, my arm. You should show them this part. You should show them this part. Just a little too far out of my arm's reach. So you didn't know part of your program was comedy today, did you? So I'm going to use a couple of these dianthus, hot pinkish purple. Doesn't take much of that bright color, especially when it's in contrast to the yellow on either side of it. Okay, so there we are with a basic what I would call synergistic, because of the way the vine and the tray and the container all mesh together to make it look like one larger piece. Now we could go another step above this, literally. this is something that I'm going to call ornamental grass. It's actually steel grass that I have purchased. And what I'm going to do is connect each of the vases with the next vase. So I'm just going to put it in, and what I can either bend it, but because I have a square tray and all of my vases are square, I'm going to actually make it square. So we're going to just bend it over. And let's see, it's going to need to go to about right there. And then I just poke the other end down into one of the other vases. And you just continue this, overlapping down the row. And then you have this sort of a upper level of canopy above your materials.
The question was, what is the name of the first purple flower?
The first purple flower is Plectranthus. It's a looks a lot like salvia, but it's actually Plectranthus is a Swedish ivy, the genus, and so this is a newer form of that has a nice blossom on it. Normally they were little white blossoms in the Swedish ivy. And let's see, let's make this one right there. This really accomplishes a couple of things. It creates one more layer visually, but that's created through the use of negative space. This one's too long. And so your design looks bigger through the use of that negative space.
You lay a couple of those in front of the tray on the table.
Of the steel grass. So you could do this multiple times. I think I'll just stop with 3 at the moment. I think if I get too many in there, it's going to look too messy and too fussy. But again, it gives you a nice angular top to the angular base of the container down at the bottom. Anybody have any questions about the first design? Synergistic. You all are very quiet. Okay, well then I'm going to move on to the second one. And Nicole, you're going to have to help me get that one up here because my cord will not go over there.
It's beautiful.
This one?
Yes. So the next one is a little bit on the larger side compared to the first one. And the whole use of water tubes is such a popular thing right now. So this is a wooden base that I've just put some green sheet moss on because I want it relatively simple at the base. And then I have these water tubes that may never stop moving, already filled with water about 3/4 of the way up. The structure that this is on are just some dowel rods painted white, and then there's another dowel rod that goes across that's wrapped with some batting, cotton batting, and then wrapped with this fuzzy yarn. And of course you can make that whatever color you need it for, whatever your color scheme is. And so this is, again, it's going to be relatively simple because we don't want to take away from the chandelier effect of all the water tubes by cluttering it up in the middle. So we want color and we want some form variations in the middle. And the first thing I'm going to do is put a little bit of white in there. So this I did find out in the garden is Orale lace. So I'm going to choose about 3 of those. I think it'll be a nice form variation. Nice flat flower head. I'm just going to work it between my wires so it's flat. Scatter those around. So let's put one right here. Now some of these are going to have flowers and others, oops, that's too tall. We'll just have a little spot of greenery. So again, you've got lots of options, 1s and 2s. This is like a puzzle, getting my hand in between all of the wires and the twigs. Okay, then stop laughing at me. I have some pansies. Now, pansies are not known for longevity, but this is going to be for a party, so we're going to say they don't have to last more than 1 or 2 days. Again, I need to work it into the center of the wire. So these water tubes are glass, but you could also just use what we would use for a lot of arrangements, which is a plastic water tube instead of a test tube. So, and they're relatively easy to procure. I have a problem that I can't pass up water tubes. So I have water tubes that are about half this size, all the way up to water tubes that are, you know, almost a foot long. So any shape or length that you need, I probably have it. But you never know when you might need an extra water tube. So I'm going to scatter these pansies around. I also have a couple of Johnny jump ups. The pansies are really pulling the color from the top of the where the wires emanate from. Okay, and now let's get back to a little bit of petticoat fern. And you can never have too much petticoat fern. So these I'm going to, again, strip all the leaves off except for the petticoat. And I can put those in sideways in between my hanging wires.
Where do you get the tubes? Was the question.
Now if I told you that, I would be giving away a trade secret. You can get water tubes, glass water tubes, almost at any scientific or craft store. I would go online first to see if you can just Google glass water tubes or glass test tubes, and then put a size in so that you can get the right size. Personally, what I have to do is just keep my eye out when someone in the department or one of our neighboring buildings is cleaning their lab and they want to get rid of some of their glassware. Well, guess who's there to take that glassware? And that's where most of mine have come from, is just various other labs. That one wants to be ornery. And let's see. Almost there. Two more tubes. So, you can scale this up, scale it down a little bit. It doesn't have to be quite this big. I was at a program a couple of years ago that this sort of a look was shown, and it was hanging, there was probably 300 tubes, bigger tubes, probably 6 or 8 inch tubes that were suspended from a tree. So the tree was a bare branch tree, and all these water tubes were underneath the tree. And then there was some underlights underneath it. It was absolutely breathtaking. And of course, that would take a lot more time than what we have for today. Oops. Chandelier of flowers. If I had more small material, I think I might add just a few more small flowers to that. But my Johnny jump ups were not ready to be trimmed after the frost or the freeze.
The question is, how are the dowels attached to the base?
Oh, good question. How are the dowels attached to the base? It's a wooden base, and so I just used a drill bit and drilled a hole slightly smaller than the dowel rod, so it's pushed in very tightly.
Okay.
Oops, we're getting a little feedback there. Let's put a few rocks down here for, again, a little bit of interest and texture at the base. All righty. Chandelier. Questions? You can put a little fan on this and have them moving all the time. That'd be really cool. Okay. Number 2 done. We'll put.
I might mention that there's felt on the bottom.
Oh, yes. Because it's wood and you might have to put that on a table, I did glue some felt on the bottom so that it wouldn't scratch anything. Now, the next one is probably going to take more flowers than the other two combined because of the size of the opening here. But what I have is a wooden base. It's a little plank of walnut wood, actually, that I've put epoxy on so that it's waterproof, and then drill 4 holes so that I can put dowel rods in, and then a dowel rod across, so that I have a little sort of saddle that my dried gourd is sitting on, and then I've bound the gourd to the uprights and the base of the dowel rods. So everything is stable and secure. And then I just used I used a rotozip or a Dremel and just cut a groove sort of all along my gourd. And again, I waterproofed it with some epoxy, and then over the top of the epoxy, because I wanted to make sure that it was waterproof, I put some polyurethane. So this gourd will probably be here for the next 20,000 years because there's so much waterproofing on it. So what I'm going to do then is put some water in the inside, and that groove becomes my opening. It doesn't take a ton of water, just as long as you have some on the bottom. Get that up here. Now, materials for this. I need something to kind of act as a mechanic to stabilize some of my other flowers. So I was roaming around the garden yesterday and came across this climbing rose that's far from blooming, but it's got a dense foliage on it. So that's what I'm going to be using to start with. And I'm just going to insert this down into the gourd. Let's go through there like that. And because I've already got these bind points binding the gourd to the upright, I can just use another bind wire or two and bind this into position. Probably take a couple of binds just to make sure that it's totally stable. So I want that to kind of be close to the opening, so that when I insert the flowers, they will stay reasonably stable. And I have another smaller one. Get some of the dead material off. And I'll come out the other end. I'm going to have to do a couple of binds on that one. I love bind wire. We used to have to just tie things on with raffia or yarn or waxed string, and this just makes the whole process so much faster.
It's pretty just the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice foliage is almost enough. I mean, we could, even using short-term flowers like pansies or that, the foliage is going to last a lot longer. So you can take flowers out and put them in as they fade a little bit. So then, hopefully, some of your aspidistra lived, And what I'm going to do is roll it. So I've already rolled one here, but I wanted to show you how I do that rolling. I use glue dashes, but you could also use double stick tape for this. And I use one glue dash on the top surface. Sure it's stuck down nice and tightly.
Could you go to right at your left a little bit? No, your left, just so that you're not behind
Oh.
here.
And I'm going to massage the base of the aspidistra so it's not quite so stiff. And then I'm going to turn it over and put 2 glue dashes, one on each side of the midrib. And again, push them down nice tightly so you know they're going to stay. Take your papers off.
Mind wire comes in how many colors?
Mind wire comes in 3 colors. I'm using the dark brown. There's one it's called natural. It's kind of a tan color. Looks a lot like raffia. And then there's a green. So it's kind of a medium green. It's not dark, but it's not pale either. So then I just stick it back to itself. And there's my rolled aspidistra. And aspidistra, again, will last a long, long time. And I like the texture variation that it provides in this case. So I'm going to use a couple of them. And mix it in with my rose foliage. That one's just a little long still. There we go. Then let's get some flowers in. I'll fill in a little bit later with some more foliage. I have some more of this red kalanchoe. You may call it kalanchoe. Depends on where you want to put the accent on that word. See if I can reach all this. I also have some scabiosa. Nice purple. I'll use several of those, scatter them all along the length. And for those of you from the Midwest especially, I have some Alquilegia columbines. Nice yellow color. Oops. So I'm going to cut several of these before we start putting them in there. And I have a burgundy snapdragon. And I have these white orele lace left, and I can reach that. So there we go.
Can you get the,
I'll need that in a little bit.
closer to it?
That would be fabulous.
Do you want to talk about the time to harvest?
If you are going to be harvesting flowers from your garden, the best time to do the harvest is early of the morning after the flowers have had a chance to hydrate fully overnight. Also, it's always a good idea to take a bucket of water with you or a vase of water with you, because some of your garden flowers, and columbine are one of those, don't like to be out of water for any length of time at all. And so just walking around and picking and you might have to stop and pet the cat or the dog, and 14 minutes later, you have dehydrated your columbine. So just be aware, and best practice is to always take a bucket with you and cut and immediately put them in water. So this is just going to be a mixed color set. Many springy kinds of colors. Let's see. I tend to put all of the same kind of flower in so that I get that disbursement either in groups or in clusters or spread apart. Actually, let's get this one back here. Well, let's save that one for later. Now let's get some purple scabiosa. One of the other appeals about this particular design is that it's elevated. So you've got this kind of an unexpected design that's not down on the table. Give it a little bit of height. Couple of fluffy ruffles ferns to fill in some blank spots of So what I'm anticipating doing is when I'm done with this design, we'll get all three of them back up on the table. And if you have any questions at that point, we'll go through that. I have to stand on my head to see this. Now, I have a couple of these daisies. You'll notice that I'm concentrating a little bit more flowers and foliages here towards the middle, just to kind of give you the sense that there's a focal area or a area of dominance. A little contrast going there. I need a couple more. I like this lavender color. And let's get that going all the way across.
And it looks so blue. It looks just like cornflower.
Oh, does it really?
On the camera, it looks exactly like cornflower.
Well, believe me, these are really a true lavender. But again, electronic media does not pick up blues and lavenders very well. Now just a bit of height with a 1 or 2 plectranthus. I have to say, it does not have a nice fragrance. Kind of got a dirty, wet sort of dog to it. It's not very, but once it's cut, you don't have to worry about it. It doesn't emit that odor. See, I'm running out of time.
Gord is G-O-U-R-D. Gord, G-O-U-R-D.
Yep. Oh, I forgot about this. Let's give it a little bit of whimsy. So I'm going to take some sword fern and peel off almost all the fronds, and then just have that coming out the top in a couple of places. Now, lots of textures, lots of forms, and color to give you a nice, long, lush sort of spring centerpiece. Like I mentioned earlier, something that's going to maybe not last. Well, it can be pulled out and one more something put in. But let me get this table cleaned off. And does anybody have any questions? So we'll put this one there. Oh, I just knocked over the vase. Okay. What can I explain, or do you have questions?
It's beautiful. It's amazing to watch you do that in front of us.
Well, it's fun to do, believe me.
Yeah, it's inspiring. It's inspiring. Makes me want to go look in my garden and find a few things and play with them.
Well, and it doesn't take very much of anything. So that's kind of my whole idea here. So I'm hopefully I did inspire you to at least go out and maybe cut one or two things and put them in a vase or a jar or hang them from your chandelier or your light fixture over your table.
Yeah, and you really showed me how, I do flowers in a vase, little vase bottles like that, but just to go out and get some moss and rocks and such.
We'll add a few more layers of interest. That's why the rocks and the moss are a part of this. It gives it a little bit more texture and more form variation, so it's a little more interesting to look at long term. I guess I would be interested to know which one of the three is or would be what you would want on your table or to be used in your home. Okay, so we'll start in the order that I made them. The tray with the jars in the bottle with the synergistic steel grass at the top. So somebody keep count. Raise your hand or do the emoji thumbs up. Okay, because I can't see the screen. Someone let me know when you're done. Number two would be the test tube chandelier. And then number three would be the gourd and the on the base of walnut.
I'm getting comments about the last one.
So what was the most in favorite?
You know what? Can you tell? I didn't have it together to see everybody's. I don't know if Nicole did. I know that I see myself doing the one with the little bottles, but I love the gourd, and I would do something like that with the test tubes. I was thinking with the test tubes is to get bigger ones, and I have a understory tree right outside my dining room. And I thought at Christmas, wouldn't that be fun to hang them? And I remember one talk you did, and you had these little lights, that you put in the water. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so I was trying to think of hanging them as like these ornaments, but floral. And I don't know, I thought that would be fun.
Yes, it would. That Christmas is a great time to do hanging test tubes, as well as I believe it was your group. It's been 5 or 6 years ago where I did wax cones.
Yeah, that's what it was. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and those can hang, or they can be inserted into a container and come from the ground up as well.
Several years ago or decades ago, there was a popular centerpiece that you could buy that came in different sections, little curved sections and little square sections. I happen to have one, and it reminds me of the bottles because you could rearrange them to form an oval or a rectangle, or I like that idea because you can use very little plant material.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't remember what they were called, but
I think we have some here in the collection.
Yeah, I think we might have one or two of those here in our Benz collection, but unlike you, I don't remember the official name of it. Flower arranger or something like that comes to my mind, but that might not be exactly right.
I love the idea of also how you've got the gourd with the foliage and just being able to have that out And then, because I get new flowers every day, or, you know, and exchange, change it up so that I always have that to kind of put them in. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it doesn't have to be rose foliage. It could be almost any kind of bushy kind of foliage like boxwood or actually I procured some yopon because it looked pretty good, but I found the rose, which has a little nicer texture to it than the yopon. But, you know, if it's a little bit larger, you could use yopon. It's branchy and allows for a grid to hold your flowers.
Yeah. Well, it's incredible.
Okay, well, I guess unless there are other questions, that's the end of the program.
Great job.
Anybody else? Well, we appreciate
Thank
it
you.
so
It was
much.
great. Thank you so much. It was gorgeous. Yes.
You're most welcome. Absolutely a pleasure to do designs and to share those with you. So,
Now, do you give carpenter lessons?
well,
Beautiful, beautiful.
well, thank you.
Well, we hope to see you again another time because it's so inspiring.
Well, thank you.
We appreciate it all.